Science fiction loves a mad scientist. From the genre's first novel Frankenstein to the present day, there have been countless examples of men and women who push science beyond its ethical limits, usually to disastrous results. However, the mad scientist doesn't live solely in the realm of fiction, and probably my favorite real-world lunatic of science is John C. Lilly, inventor of the sensory deprivation tank, pioneer in dolphin research, self-proclaimed psychonaut, and vocal advocate for hallucinogenic drug use. I certainly don't condone the man's methods or his enthusiasm for mind-altering substances, but reading up on his insane experiments and his bizarre ramblings about pan-dimensional aliens that once stole his penis is a pastime I can't recommend enough. Enter Paddy Chayefsky, Academy Award-winning screenwriter of Marty, The Hospital, and Network. Interested in updating the classic Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Chayefsky began interviewing scientists and studying up on subjects like genetic regression and anthropology. When he discovered John C. Lilly's research involving sensory deprivation tanks and extreme drug use, with Lilly the typical subject of his own experiments, Chayefsky knew he had found his mad scientist.
Edward Jessup is on a quest to unlock the secrets of the human mind. With the help of a sensory deprivation tank and a dangerous hallucinogenic substance, he has just discovered something startling, that his very genetic makeup is beginning to change as he enters new states of consciousness. But with his obsession pushing away his wife and children, and his experiment spiraling out of control, can he hold on to his sanity long enough to find the answers he seeks, or will he devolve into something less than human?
Before we go any further, if you could hit that like button, it'll help this channel discover its true self. If you really do like these videos, don't forget to subscribe to get more content. Thank you in advance. With that out of the way, let's get back to the subject at hand. When Paddy Chayefsky took an 88-page treatment for a movie called Altered States to Columbia executive Daniel Melnick, he was told to turn it into a novel. Even though Chayefsky had never written one before, he agreed, and Altered States, a novel, was published in early 1978 to mixed reviews and mediocre sales, no doubt hindered by Chayefsky's lack of interest in promoting it as anything more than a template for a screenplay, which he himself wrote. Columbia bought the rights and script for just under $1 million, with Chayefsky given almost full creative control over the project. To direct the movie, Columbia turned to Arthur Penn, an American New Wave director famous for The Chase, Little Big Man, and Night Moves, among others. Penn and Chayefsky then cast the movie together, settling on William Hurt as the male lead, the obsessed mad scientist Edward Jessup. Beating out other choices like Scott Glenn, this would be Hurt's feature film debut, though he had done a lot of critically acclaimed work on stage and a handful of small performances for television. The screenplay had had a profound emotional impact on Hurt when he read it, but he didn't think he could do it. He initially met with Penn and Chayefsky, intending on turning the part down but insisting the movie be made anyway. When he turned to leave, Penn and Chayefsky, taken aback by Hurt's passion for the project, told him that they wouldn't make the movie without his involvement. For Jessup's love interest/wife Emily, they cast Blair Brown, who had made a minor splash with her performances in The Paper Chase and The Choir Boys. For Jessup's colleagues, Arthur Rosenberg and Mason Parrish, they hired Bob Balaban, hot off of Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Charles Hayde, who would later star in Hill Street Blues. Other notable actors in the film include John Larroquette and a young Drew Barrymore in minor roles. Trouble started early into pre-production. Various disputes led to Arthur Penn, the director, walking away from the project, along with special effects wizard John Dykstra, who was replaced by the much cheaper Brand Farron. With the budget ballooning past the $12 million mark, Columbia Pictures dropped the film as well, with it eventually winding up at Warner Brothers. After an exhaustive search for a new director, Chayefsky settled on Ken Russell, a British filmmaker known for Women in Love, The Devils, and The Who's Tommy. This would be Russell's first American production, and according to him, he was the 27th choice of director, after such heavyweights as Steven Spielberg, Sidney Pollack, Stanley Kubrick, Orson Welles, and Robert Wise had all passed on the film. Unfortunately, Chayefsky and Russell proved to be a volatile combination. By contractual obligation, Russell was prevented from making any changes to the script. He couldn't even alter a single word, but he reportedly hated Chayefsky's dialogue and tried to come up with creative ways to get the actors to read their lines with either heightened emotion or barely audible mumbles. Chayefsky was also a constant nuisance, making demands about tiny details like the color of paint being used or the angle of the lighting. To be fair, Russell was allegedly drunk a lot during the production and treated Chayefsky with open hostility once the filming started. After several heated arguments, Russell banned Chayefsky from the set. By the time Chayefsky went to Warner Brothers asking them to remove Russell, production was already well underway, so Chayefsky walked away and disowned his own movie, having his name replaced in the credits with the pseudonym Sidney Aaron. When Altered States finally released on Christmas Day of 1980, it was well received by critics, who forgave all of the behind-the-scenes drama and praised the movie's visual style, daring ambition, and delirious tone. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards and 4 Saturn Awards, with Dick Smith taking one home for Best Makeup. However, it didn't perform particularly well at the box office, earning only $19.9 million against its $15 million budget. Paddy Chayefsky died of cancer 6 months after the film's premiere, and Ken Russell, despite remaining true to his contract by not altering the script, was all but banned from ever working in Hollywood again. Despite it all, though, Altered States is still treated fondly by audiences and critics alike, with respectable ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and a reputation for being a rare example of Hollywood's willingness to experiment and take risks. For my part, I kinda love the movie too, for being so unapologetically out there. I'll agree with Russell that the dialogue is painfully overwrought and pretentious, but it works thanks to William Hurt, who has proven again and again that he can deliver overwritten dialogue with ease.
Toxic metabolite stuff for more or less replicating Heath's and Friedhoff strategies, trying to find maverick substances specific to schizophrenia. I think we're chasing our tails. What do you do?
There's also the soundtrack by John Paul Corigliano, which was robbed of its well-deserved Oscar by Fame. I also dig the body horror elements and the embrace of a wacky, psychedelic premise that posits that, with the right chemicals and the right conditions, a person can somehow alter physical reality.
What we saw tonight was a physical phenomenon, an inexplicable physical phenomenon.
But above all, it's the theme that really resonates with me. This is a movie about obsession, about how we blind ourselves to what really matters in life by getting fixated on one thing, even if that thing is the search for truth. I've seen people claim this is a retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, that it's a movie about Jesus and Mary, or that it's nothing more than the Jekyll and Hyde retread that its writer initially set out to make. However, I have to agree with what Chayefsky himself said about the story. For all its craziness, Altered States is a simple love story about a man who pushes himself to the brink of insanity, only to discover that the only thing that truly matters is his family. The movie can also be seen as the end of an era, the last gasp of the experimental psychedelic sci-fi of the 60s and 70s. Or you could view it as a precursor to the body horror flicks of the 80s, movies like David Cronenberg's The Fly. Weirdly enough, it reminds me a lot of The Tingler. Either way, it's not a film that should be ignored when exploring the history of science fiction cinema, and it is definitely deserving of the title of sci-fi classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Who's your favorite mad scientist, either in the movies or in real life? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to read written reviews of several more sci-fi classics in both film and literature, head on over to my website at emcgill.com, where I'm currently exploring the works of Isaac Asimov. And if you want access to even more great content, why not join my Patreon, where you can get early access to new videos, vote on future topics, and more. But until next time, when we'll all be under the thumb of an android police force, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
talking about?
God. Jesus, crucifixions.